The truth doesn't whisper anymore, it screams. And this time, it didn't come from a tabloid, a troll account, or a blurry Reddit thread. It came from Tom Bauer. And when he speaks, palaces get nervous and narratives start shaking. Because the moment Bauer opened his mouth about Harry and Meghan's children, something snapped online. Not curiosity, suspicion. Deep, collective, long, simmering suspicion. This wasn't about cute baby photos anymore. This was about what doesn't add up and why it never has.
What do you make, Tom, of these accusations that Harry is using his children to, well, as a weapon, I guess, against his family?
Very much my motive. I tried to find out the truth. And it was only by finding so many different, in one way or another, silence Harry and Meghan. Because otherwise, these attacks from California.
Tom Bauer didn't tease, he didn't hedge, he didn't soften it. He said just enough to light the fuse and walked away like someone who knows exactly what he's doing. Because Bauer isn't chasing attention, attention chases him. This is a man whose entire career has been built on tearing through polished fades and dragging uncomfortable truths into daylight. And suddenly, he's talking about Harry and Meghan's kids, and people are leaning forward, not because they want drama, but because they've felt for years that something about Archie and Lilibet has been off. Timelines that slide, details that blur, moments that feel staged instead of lived. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Bauer's involvement flips the switch, because now it's not internet speculation. Now it's an investigator with receipts energy asking the same questions millions have been whispering for years. Why is everything so controlled? Why does every image feel curated? Why do the simplest facts feel impossible to pin down?
Okay, so Lily arrives, right? And, it was orchestrated with the curating exacted.
This is where Bauer's reputation matters. He doesn't guess, he digs, he waits, he cross-checks, and he only speaks when he's confident enough to let the implication do the damage. His past work proves it. When he takes interest in someone, it's because there's something worth uncovering. And when Meghan entered the royal orbit, Bauer clocked it immediately. Not fascination, curiosity, because access shut down. Doors closed, voices went silent. People who normally love to talk suddenly remembered appointments they didn't have. And that kind of silence, it doesn't calm investigators, it provokes them.
All sorts of relations in Britain. He hasn't got a purpose. He's embarrassed with his charities in Africa.
Bauer ran into walls everywhere. Friends vanished. Contacts froze. Cooperation dried up overnight. And when only one voice remained willing to speak, Meghan's father, even that came wrapped in restraint. Family loyalty, careful wording, emotional distance. And that resistance, that's what sharpened Bauer's focus. Because nothing attracts scrutiny like over-control. And now his attention is fixed on the one subject Harry and Meghan guard harder than anything else, their children. Here's where the discomfort sets in. Because royal births are usually predictable. Announcements, dates, doctors, locations, tradition. Even when privacy is requested, the framework stays intact. But with Archie and later Lilibet, everything felt improvised.
Can you just tell them the truth? Can you say to the world, you're not giving him a title and we want to keep him safe?
Dates didn't sit right. Statements contradicted each other. Details appeared, then quietly disappeared. And people noticed. Not just critics, not just trolls. Ordinary observers who started lining things up and realizing the lines didn't meet. Individually, each inconsistency could be brushed off. Together, they formed a pattern. And now, Bauer is pointing at that pattern calmly, deliberately, while the internet explodes behind him. This is where it turns from awkward to alarming. According to multiple accounts, the birth announcements themselves didn't reflect reality. Not small errors, core details, times, locations, sequences, and somehow official statements stood by information that later unraveled. The Portland hospital narrative, publicly accepted, privately questioned. Why announce a hospital birth that apparently never happened? Why release statements that don't survive scrutiny? Why say nothing when the contradictions surface? Silence doesn't erase confusion, it amplifies it. And when lineage is involved, confusion isn't just messy, it's dangerous. Because in royal terms, lineage isn't symbolic, it's structural. It defines titles, placement, legitimacy. It's not emotional, it's procedural. That's why people care. Not because they want scandal, but because the system runs on clarity. Behind closed doors, conversations are happening. Quiet ones, careful ones. People who understand the institution asking what these inconsistencies mean long term. Because when insiders start whispering, it's no longer noise, it's concern. And hovering over all of it is Harry, visibly strained, reportedly restless, caught between defending his family and realizing the story is slipping beyond his control. Because here's the cruel irony. The harder the narrative is managed, the less believable it becomes. Every photo feels approved. Every moment feels packaged. Every appearance feels filtered through intent. And when children are involved, that level of control doesn't comfort people, it unsettles them. Add financial pressure to the mix and everything tightens. Media deals, contracts, expectations, a lifestyle that depends on continued relevance. When income relies on storytelling, silence becomes a liability, but speaking risks exposure. And so the tension builds. Harry watches the reaction spiral. Meghan responds strategically. Lawyers move, letters fly, and instead of stopping the conversation, it feeds it. Because nothing says don't look here louder than aggressive containment. Old allies step back. Support networks thin. Isolation deepens. And the fairy tale narrative, the one about freedom, authenticity, and escape, starts to crack under the weight of unanswered questions. All of this circles back to one uncomfortable truth. This didn't have to happen. Early clarity could have shut this down. Straightforward explanations could have ended the speculation before it metastasized. But silence was chosen. Control was tightened. And now, years later, every missing detail feels intentional. And when Tom Bauer hints, doesn't accuse, doesn't shout, just hints, it lands harder than any headline ever could. Because history doesn't forget unanswered questions. It archives them. And this story? It's far from finished. The new photo didn't arrive loudly. No press blast, no formal announcement. It slipped out quietly, and that alone made people pause. Because when you spent years controlling every pixel, every shadow, every angle, a sudden image doesn't feel accidental. It feels calculated. And this one hit differently. Lilibet's image, the one Tom Bauer indirectly cracked open, didn't resolve questions. It reignited them. Faces were studied. Backgrounds were zoomed. Metadata was speculated over. And suddenly, what should have been a sweet human moment became forensic evidence in the court of public doubt. This is the curse of secrecy. Once trust erodes, nothing is neutral anymore. Every smile becomes suspect. Every image becomes a puzzle. People weren't asking, is she adorable? They were asking, why now? Why release something after years of distance? Why allow a glimpse when the wall has been so high? Why give the internet just enough to chew on, but not enough to settle anything? And that's where the shocking twist really lives, not in the photo itself, but in what it forces open. Because the image didn't soften the conversation. It hardened it. Online timelines resurfaced immediately. Screenshots from years ago were dragged back into daylight. Old statements were reread with colder eyes. And suddenly, that polished narrative Harry and Meghan built started collapsing under its own symmetry. Everything was too perfect, too managed, too deliberate, and Harry feels it. Sources paint a man unraveling quietly, not explosively, but internally. The kind of stress that doesn't scream, it simmers. He checks reactions obsessively. He tracks what's said. He reads comments he shouldn't read. He watches breakdown videos dissecting his life frame by frame. This is a man who once believed walking away would bring peace. Instead, it brought scrutiny without protection. The institution he left used to absorb pressure for him. Now every hit lands directly on his chest. And the cruelest part? The very thing he built his identity around, fatherhood, protection, safety, is now the center of the storm. He wanted to shield his children from the chaos. Instead, the chaos followed them. Meghan's response remains controlled, strategic, legal. Statements don't come from emotion, they come from advisors. Every move is weighed. Every silence is intentional. But silence no longer reads as dignity, it reads as avoidance. Because at this stage, people aren't asking for intimacy, they're asking for clarity. And clarity is the one thing they refuse to give. The royal family's distance becomes impossible to ignore here. Grandparents unseen, cousins absent, no casual overlap, no accidental warmth caught by long lenses. Compare it to the rest of the family and the contrast is brutal. Other children are seen growing, changing, laughing, existing within the wider circle. Archie and Lilibet exist almost exclusively as concepts released in controlled intervals, framed through statements, protected to the point of invisibility. Some say it's love, others say it's fear. But inside royal circles, distance like this is rarely emotional. It's procedural, protective, sometimes preemptive. And whispers say that's exactly what's happening, a deliberate step back just in case. Because if unresolved questions ever turn into confirmed complications, proximity becomes liability. That possibility alone tells you how serious this has become. This isn't about gossip anymore. This is about legacy, about records, about how history writes names in ink that doesn't fade. Royal archives don't forget confusion, they document it. And that's what makes Tom Bauer's quiet confidence so unsettling. He doesn't accuse, he doesn't dramatize, he lets implication hang in the air like smoke, knowing people will choke on it themselves. He understands something Harry doesn't want to face yet. Once doubt reaches this level, it doesn't disappear with time. It grows roots. 20 years from now, these questions won't be gone. They'll be footnotes, appendices, academic debates. Because institutions built on continuity don't erase anomalies, they study them. Financial pressure squeezes everything tighter. The deals can't fail. The content must continue. Silence costs money. Transparency risks control, and so they remain trapped between two bad options, choosing the one that feels safer but looks worse every day. That's the tragedy here. They wanted freedom but built a prison of secrecy. They wanted authenticity but delivered curation. They wanted privacy but created suspicion. And now, even moments meant to feel tender, a child's photo, a birthday post, feel like chess moves. Harry is reportedly exhausted, emotionally volatile, torn between loyalty to his wife and the creeping realization that the strategy isn't working. Friends from his past keep their distance, not out of betrayal, but discomfort. Nobody wants to be caught inside a narrative that might implode. And through it all, the children remain silent centers of a storm they didn't create. That's the part nobody wins. The saddest truth is how avoidable this was. Early transparency could have shut this down before it metastasized. Straight answers could have disarmed speculation. But control was prioritized over trust, and trust, once lost, doesn't respond to legal letters. It responds to truth. Now the public watches. The institution watches. Historians will one day watch. And the questions linger unanswered, growing heavier with every attempt to manage rather than address them. This isn't a scandal in motion. It's a legacy problem forming in real time. And unless something changes, unless clarity replaces control, this story won't fade. It will fossilize. Because history doesn't care how carefully a narrative was curated. It only cares whether it was true. He cares whether it was true. He cares whether it was true. He cares.